Welcome to the silent verdict.
With Clara Monroe and Elias Gray.
Back in 1946, the Harvard Law School's library purchased what they believed was just a copy of the Magna Carta for just $27.50. However, two British academics have found it's actually an original print of the document from the 1300s. That would make it just one of 7 known originals of the Magna Carta, which was a critical document in the history of liberties vis-a-vis the state. Habeas corpus is one of its critical innovations. In 2007, another original print sold for more than $20 million.
Can you actually believe a $27 purchase ended up rewriting, well, a piece of history?
It sounds completely made up, doesn't it? But it really happened.
It did. At Harvard Law School, of all places. Back in 1946, they picked up this document, paid just $27.50.
Pocket change, really, even then.
Right. And they thought, okay, this is a copy of the Magna Carta, maybe from 1327, standard stuff.
A decent historical document, but not earth-shattering.
Exactly. But now, British researchers have looked again and discovered it's the real deal.
You mean an original?
A genuine original Magna Carta from the year 1300. One of only 7 known survivors from King Edward I's issue.
Wow, that's huge. From $27 to potentially priceless.
It's mind-boggling.
Right.
And what this piece of parchment actually represents, that's the really astonishing part.
Oh, absolutely. The Magna Carta itself, it wasn't just some royal decree. It was foundational.
Foundational how?
It basically established the idea that everyone, even the king, was subject to the law. You have to pause and think how radical that was in the 13th century.
That a monarch's power wasn't absolute.
Precisely. It laid the groundwork for, well, so much of modern constitutional law, ideas we see right in the U.S. Constitution.
And to think Harvard had an original just sitting there, basically unknown for decades.
It really makes you wonder what other stories are hidden away in archives, doesn't it? Silent artifacts holding massive secrets.
It does. And the Magna Carta isn't just some dusty old document either. It's seen as a cornerstone of, well, freedom.
A fundamental step in England's political development, certainly. Its influence stretches right across the Atlantic.
To the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights.
Exactly. You can trace the lineage of some core concepts back to it.
So how did we get from this, cheap auction buy to this massive rediscovery? What were the steps?
Well, the journey's pretty fascinating. A mix of luck and some really sharp detective work. Let's start back in 46.
Okay.
Harvard buys it. $27.50. Why so cheap? The auction catalog listed it as a 1327 copy and noted it had some damage.
So cataloged incorrectly from the start.
Seems like it. And just before Harvard bought it, a London book dealer had picked it up for 42 pounds.
42 pounds. So still not considered hugely valuable then either.
Nope. He bought it from a Royal Air Force war hero. So it already had a bit of a past, but everyone thought it was a later, less important version.
Just a copy with maybe an interesting ownership history. What changed things? What was the spark?
This is a really cool part. Fast forward decades, there's a leading Magna Carta expert at King's College London.
Right.
And he's studying digitized versions of unofficial copies, just going through images online, basically.
Okay.
And he comes across Harvard's document in the digital archive. Something about the image just clicks. A hunch.
A hunch. Based on a digital image.
Yeah. He suspected it might actually be an original, not a copy. Imagine that moment, seeing something on a screen that could change everything.
Incredible. A digital clue unlocks a 700-year-old secret. So he had this feeling, but how did they, prove it?
Right. A hunch isn't proof. So, rigorous verification was needed. He teamed up with a professor from the University of East Anglia.
Okay, collaboration.
And together they started this really meticulous comparison. Harvard's document against the 6 other known originals from that 1300 issue.
What exactly are they looking for in that kind of comparison? What makes an original stand out?
Think of it like historical forensics. They looked at the physical dimensions first. Did it match the size of the others?
And did it?
It did. Then the handwriting, the script. They found specific things, like a distinctive large capital E in the word Eduardus.
Like a scribe's signature trait.
Sort of, yeah, and elongated letters in the very first line. These features were consistent across the other known originals.
Okay, so the look and feel matched up. What else?
They looked beyond the visual. The text itself was crucial.
How so? Was the wording different?
Well, that's the key. Researchers already knew that for the 1300 issue, a new standardized text was prepared. Very precise.
Ah, so all the originals from that year should have the exact same wording.
Exactly. The clerks were under strict orders. Stick to the official text. No variations. So finding that same uniform text in Harvard's copy was really strong evidence.
Compelling. But they wanted more certainty.
Absolutely. You need to be sure with something this significant, and that's where modern tech comes in.
Ah, science to the rescue.
Pretty much. The Harvard librarians provided these incredibly detailed images. They used ultraviolet light and spectral imaging.
Fancy stuff. What does that do?
It lets you see things hidden from the naked eye, subtle details in the ink, the parchment, and the results.
Let me guess.
A perfect match. The text on Harvard's copy lined up exactly with the other confirmed 1,300 originals. Game over.
Wow. From a $27 hunch confirmed by spectral imaging. That's quite a leap.
It really is.
But the story didn't end there, did it?
Yeah.
I heard there was some historical detective work tracing this specific copy's journey.
Yes, that adds another whole layer. Their research suggests this particular original might have been the one sent to Appleby.
Appleby, in Westmoreland, England,
Yeah.
a former parliamentary borough.
That's the one. And the provenance, like the ownership history they pieced together, is fascinating.
Go on.
Okay, so it seems it was put up for auction back in 1945 by a First World War flying ace.
A war hero again.
Right. He had inherited this collection of archives dating back to the early 19th century. And in those archives
Yes.
was material from someone who'd retired to the English Lake District. This person was apparently friends with William Wordsworth, the poet,
Wordsworth, no way.
and also friends with a local landowner who happened to be the hereditary lord of the manor of Appleby.
So Wordsworth's friend gets papers, potentially, including the Appleby Magna Carta, from the lord of the manor, passes them down. They end up with a WWI pilot who options it. Amazing.
It's an incredible chain of connection, isn't it? Ties the document to specific places and people across centuries.
It really brings it alive. These aren't just legal texts. They're objects that pass through human hands, witnessed history.
Precisely. And, this whole thing also highlights why they made multiple originals back then.
Because communication was slow.
Exactly. You needed copies distributed widely so people knew what the king had agreed to. And the fact that they're so uniform, these originals,
It shows how important accuracy was.
immensely important. They weren't just getting the gist out there, they were duplicating the exact legal text.
So after all this investigation, the science, the history, what's the final official word on Harvard's $27 document?
The verdict is in, and it's definitive. Harvard Law School's purchase is absolutely a genuine, original Magna Carta from 1300.
One of only 7 known from that specific issue by Edward I.
That's right, which makes it incredibly rare. Its value, almost impossible to calculate. Some say comparable to a Van Gogh.
A Van Gogh, but presumably Harvard isn't putting it on Christie's anytime soon.
Highly unlikely. Given its immense historical and, importantly for them, legal significance, the expectation is they'll display it. Share it with the world.
Which seems right. From a dusty auction lot to this celebrated historical treasure, it's a powerful story.
It really is.
It reminds you that history isn't always locked away in grand pronouncements. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, in a document bought for almost nothing. Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What else is out there?
Yeah. What other unassuming objects tucked away in boxes or archives are just holding these profound secrets, waiting for someone to finally notice?